Today, I'm speaking with Chris Obdam, founder and CEO of BettyBlox, which is one of the biggest low-code platforms out there. He has over 112 employees, and he secured over 33 million euros in funding. We're discussing on how he made it from growing up on a tulip farm and programming in his basement to leading one of the biggest tech enterprises in his scene right now, and what it took him to get there. We're discussing some practical terms like hiring, bootstrapping versus funding, where the tech scene is going, but also some personal items like what he does to recharge and how he views work-life balance. He gives a lot of valuable nuggets in this podcast, so please stay tuned. And if you want to get in contact with Chris yourself, just shoot him a message on LinkedIn. It's exactly what I did, and he likes to help people like us, so he will definitely reply. If you would like to see more podcasts, like, subscribe, and tell me who you want to see next. Enjoy our conversation. Chris, welcome. Thank you for joining. Already introduced you a little bit, but for the people who don't know you yet, could you maybe tell a little bit more about BettyBlox and about yourself?
Sure. I'm one of the two co-founders of BettyBlox, a low-code application development platform. And the other founder is my brother, Tim. We started our first company 8 years ago, and we are now scaling BettyBlox. I have a background as a developer, but I've been a CEO since the start. So yeah, that's me.
Very cool. I saw also that you and your brother were raised on a tulip farm. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah,
So
our dad
how
is a tulip grower.
is a tulip grower? How was it growing up in that? Was it like a farm?
Yeah, it was a farm. Yeah, so it depends on how you define what a farm is, of course, because most people see a farm as a place where there are animals and cows and whatever. But this is a tulip farm. So in a tulip farm, there are barns and there are a lot of tractors, but no animals at all. But that is
Okay.
where I grew up. So even when I was younger, I was always there helping my dad. And some people would call that working, but it was just helping my dad. And then I went to university, and that was also the moment that I stopped helping my dad. So I was at 21, and until that stage, I was, let's say, assistant manager to my dad's farm.
Something very different from what you're doing now. But was he also like in the business of selling those tulips? I can imagine. So did you learn some skills there as well?
Yeah, so the tulip industry operates quite odd because they have an auction system. So that means that you create. So my dad didn't really create the flowers, but the bulb underneath. So you grow the bulbs, and then you send them to an auction, and then somebody tells you what you have earned, right? Which is a bit odd because you have actually no influence over what the actual price is going to be. The quality influences a little bit, and the name of your farm, right? The reputation of your farm. So my dad always told me that that I need to find a different profession where you have more control over your own destiny.
Okay.
So that's not the reason why I ended up in IT, but it is maybe the reason why I started looking for something else, but it was not for me.
And was that process of getting interested in the internet, web applications, or just programming, was that something that happened at a young age as well?
Yeah, so it started when when my dad bought a secondhand computer. It's the first and only time that I've ever bought a secondhand computer. We didn't have any computers. We had an Atari game console, right? An ancient one, right? This is somewhere in the 90s. And the personal computer was somewhat emerging, very early stage. And then my dad also for the business, but also because he knew his sons were interested in technology, he bought a personal computer, which I helped to pick up. So the man who was selling the computer gave me the instructions. And then after that, I just started meddling with the computer. And the only thing it had installed on the PC was just Microsoft DOS and no Windows whatsoever still. And the only thing I could find was QBasic, which was a programming language. So I wasn't necessarily looking to start developing, but it was the only thing I could do. But I quickly, within the first hour, I already understood why this was so much fun. And I never stopped enjoying making software ever since. but it's a long time ago.
Very cool. Yeah, you hear a lot of these stories from technical founders that I don't know if it's a pattern, but people who were kind of like in the middle of nowhere with a computer and then they taught themselves. So you kind of fit into that quite well. And you also mentioned that before BettyBlox, there were a lot of predecessors, sort of, right? Like ideas or projects that kind of led up to what you have now. Could you tell me a little bit more about those ideas? Like, what was the first thing that you maybe built on the internet?
Yeah, so it was actually when I was still at school. The first thing was just more something I made out of curiosity. I was just looking at the internet and I was like, okay, how does this work? And the fun thing about the internet is that, right, it's like self-explanatory that you can find all your answers about the internet on the internet itself. So I found a website where they explained how the internet worked. And then I think I bought like HTML for Dummies, really, like ages ago. I think it was in that there was also a source for information, and then you just started crafting HTML. And then I still remember the moment where I'm like, okay, but how the fuck?
You can curse if you want, yeah.
How the fuck do they do that, right? So you have information, and you have information which is on a server, but it needs to appear in a browser. So I just started doing research, right? How does it work? And I think I found Perl, which is programming language and was used then. And I started because I conceptually didn't understand how it worked, because I have my browser here, which is on my computer, but I have something on the server. How does this work? And then I think next to that I found PHP. It's part of my origin story, but it's not something I'm very proud of. No, that's not true, right?
I still use it.
It has helped me over the years quite a lot. It's only at the early stage to start going, so I think I should be happy with that. And then I knew how to do it, and then I just started building websites. And then, right, the moment you know how to do that, I think business finds yourself, especially in the 90s, right, where you're like, hey, I know how to build websites. Oh, wow, cool. Most companies were like, I don't have a website.
Do you also not have a website yet, or is it not good enough and you would like more conversions? I'm building super clean, high converting landing pages in order to fund my own SaaS journey. Check the link in the description if you want me to build one of these bad boys for you. I'm only working with 2 people at a time, so be quick.
And then I started just as a freelancer, starting just to do the stuff as a side gig besides my my school. And then finished school, and I was like, hey, what do I do next? And then, let's keep on doing this. I think that's what happened.
And did you study something related to IT as well?
Yeah, I had a computer science degree.
Computer science.
Yeah. So in Dutch, it's informatica. That's what it's called.
Cool. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I'm studying informatiekunde. It's like computer what's it called? Information technologies, but it's like your version was the more hardcore version, I think.
Could be, yeah. They renamed it as well, so it might even be the same thing.
Could be. So you started building stuff on the internet for yourself, and at a certain point, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started building solutions for your brother because he needed something.
Yeah. So I started just freelancing. Then out of university, when I finished university, I did a minor of entrepreneurship. And part of the minor was to found your own company, which I did. And then because I always worked together with my brother, we're quite complementary. I suggested, hey, let's continue to do this. Are you open for that? And he said, yeah, sure, of course. And then we started our first company. And the first company was opportunistic as hell, right? I think we still had a sign on the wall which says, if everything fails, I will sell my mother. Right. So the main goal of that company was just to succeed in life by using IT. Of course, right. IT is what I loved, and Tim, my brother, as well. But right, we didn't really know what to do other than, hey, we know technology. Let's just sell what we do. And then over the years, we specialized in building business applications. Right. So in the beginning, it was websites and whatever, everything that we could find. And then over the years, we specialized in building business applications. So those are applications that people inside corporate or enterprise environment use for their day job. And that company grew bigger, and we came to a stage where we were struggling to manage our own internal systems because there was not that much software available. And yeah, we knew how to build software. And so we built our own internal software. But my brother was a little bit annoyed by the fact that if he needed to change something, he always needed to ask me. Well, he knew what he needed, but he was not a programmer. So he said, right, why don't you build me something that I can just change this without me learning how to code? And that was the first baby steps of BettyBlox, which is now low code. And then the term wasn't really coined as well at that stage. So that is how BettyBlox came to be, out of, let's say, the desire of my brother to build applications without coding. And that's what we built. And that's why we are here today.
Great. And what do you think is the reason for the low-code industry growing so rapidly?
Yeah, I think there's, just to start with, there's still an exponential demand for software. AI has emerged as well, and a lot of people expected that AI would kill jobs. But if you look at history and how that has happened historically, new technologies have always created more jobs than less. Of course, right, some professions will be less relevant and will die, but the technology will also first bring more jobs. And that is what AI is doing, and also what AI is doing is software development as well. So people need more software, and there are just not enough developers to go around. And the people who are experiencing a problem somewhere in a business environment, those are not the developers, right? If you're an accountant somewhere and you're stuck managing your invoices, then you want to solve that yourself and not ask somebody in IT or ask an external company. You want to solve that yourself. And I think that paradigm, that whole concept has not changed and will only grow stronger. So we will expect that the low-code industry will change over the next couple of years. But let's say the problem that people experience in the business environment, and let's say that, and the desire that they want to solve that themselves, that will continue to grow. And I think that's also the main driver of why low-code emerged and why it is successful.
Yeah. So to kind of get more of a grip on your processes, especially when you're on top of the business and you're not technical, to have the ability to still change processes and get a grip on your IT.
Yeah, so I was create the parallel with Excel or spreadsheets. When spreadsheet emerged, let's say the perception was that spreadsheets could only be used by, I don't know, geniuses, right? Really smart people, and that there are a specific small group of people who can do this. Right now, right, you're at school, you know how to use a spreadsheet, Excel or whatever, right? So it is gone from something that was for specialists to something that everybody can do in every role. And our vision is that will happen for software in general as well, in a specific way, that at the end, everybody can build their own simple way of, their own simple form of software, right? If you're now at school somewhere, you might learn SQL, right? SQL queries. My brother was trained, he's more the economics guy. He was trained to do SQL queries because that was helpful. So software is so all around, that means that everybody needs to have a certain level of experience with it and a certain skill set to it as well.
Yeah, you're completely right. I'm learning it right now. And the thing with low-code platforms, I've dabbled in it a little bit. And what I notice is that it's kind of coding in disguise. Would you agree with me on that? That you're coding, but it doesn't feel like coding.
Yeah, it's not supposed to feel like coding. So you're right there. And what it also should be is that it should be about the end result and less about technology, right? Where developers, and I'm a developer by trade, so I know how it works. As a developer, at the end, you love code and you love building stuff with code. And that is different than when you're a business user and you want to solve your problem, right? The tooling and the low-code tool is just means to an end. That doesn't mean that the underlying technology is not important. I think that's really important still. But for the problem solver there, the problem owner, it's less relevant. So it shouldn't feel like coding. It should feel like solving your problem.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. So yeah, you mentioned that you think the industry will also kind of shift. The low code industry, the demand will stay the same, but the way that the problems are solved will change. Is that because of AI, or do you have another vision?
Yeah, of course, AI is a force of nature at this moment. So there are high expectations of AI in software development, and rightfully so. I think what's important to state with AI and low code is that low code emerged because people didn't want to see code. They didn't want to feel as a coder. So the people who are now using AI to generate code, right? Those are people are not directly connected to low code, right? If they would use low code and now use AI, right? That's fine. Same as people now still building software without low code, right? That is still the bulk of software being developed at this stage. Is still software which is being coded by hand. So that's fine. But the promise that is out there is that AI will help business users to build applications faster. So that is happening. But we also foresee a trend where low-code platforms need to be more open as well. If you look at how low-code platforms now are architectured, it means that if you choose a certain low-code platform, you cannot go anywhere, right? You're stuck in that silo. And our vision for the future of low-code is that it should be open, right? It just means to an end, and the application at the end should not look different. Also, from a technology point of view, if you have manually coded it or if you have built it by low-code. And I think that is the next wave and the next revolution that will come in low code. And we plan to be front runners there. And that's what we're working on. So there are two forces, right? One is a let's say change of paradigm, and the other one is the threat or the opportunity that AI brings.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I can also see sort of a shift emerging with vibe coding and stuff like that. Have you seen about vibe coding? Seen anything about it?
No. Yeah.
Yeah, you have like these platforms like Cursor, or yeah, so like Copilot on VS Code or Cursor, where you can basically just speak. So they set up kind of extensions to be able to speak with your code editor, and then they just explain what they want to build, and they do nothing and just sit back, listen to music and stream. So it's pretty cool. You can see the shift of people going from not really caring about how something is being made anymore, and more about the end result, what you mentioned. I also wanted to get a little bit into bootstrapped versus funding, because I noticed that BettyBlox has, they have a big amount of funding. I think they secured it, or you guys secured it a few years ago. What was that difference there? And correct me if I'm wrong, but it was $33 million or euros?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
33 million euros.
Yeah. So we are by nature a bootstrapped company, right? So what we have always done is just, we were building software for clients, and every penny that we earned, we invested in software development of our product. And I think that fits our nature still quite well, is that is how we operate. What we also wanted to do is grow the company faster and adapt faster. So if you have nothing, then you need to bootstrap first, right? There are only a few companies who need funding from the early stages, right? And I think it's also that the financing and the investment space has radically changed in the last years, where let's say 5 years ago, somebody would create a deck which was just an idea, and then they would go to an investor and collect seed money and then start building. I think that has never been the right way, because
I agree.
Building a company is blood, sweat, and tears. So you need to invest first these three elements before I would ever invest in a company. And I think that is what the standard is again as well. So you need to find, if you want to go for funding, find the right moment, right? And that's also the right moment of scaling. And what I've learned is that if you think you have found the right moment, you probably have not found it yet. And are too premature. Because if you have found a couple of customers who like it, that's cool. But how repeatable is it? Because if you really want to scale and use funding to do so, right, you need to have proven that first more. And that's a delicate balance. And it also differs a lot between the type of product you are, type of software product and everything like that. But my experience is that everybody starts to scale in a too early stage. And it hurts the company. The same as with going to the US, and we are part of that as well, is that everybody goes to the US by far too soon. And number one reason is because they just see it as a fun thing and they want to go there. They're ambitious, but it's not a sane business decision most of the time. So, yeah, but I think that's podcast on its own.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one though, because the landscape of funding is very different. You see a lot of companies go to the States to maybe acquire more funding or acquire it sooner. But do you have, it's difficult because of it depends on the industry and stuff like that. But could you give general advice on in what stage to look for funding in your business?
That of course depends on a lot of variables. So the first thing is, of course, do you need the money just to stay alive? Because some people, right, don't have the luxury of not earning anything, and not €1, and then making sure you can still eat and sleep in a home somewhere. I think that is also always one thing. So, right, ideally, you can bootstrap your company by using either your savings or having a creative setup where you have a job and you do it on the side, although that is also a big risk as well. Because the best way to start a company is when you're young, right? There's no alternative to that. When I started my company, I lived with my parents for a short period, to be honest. And I lived off, I think it was already euros. So I think I lived out of €1,000 a month for 2 to 3 years, right? That's all I had. So at the beginning, that was fine. As long as I could pay my rent. I had a partner, a girlfriend at that stage, and right? So I chipped a little bit in, and that was all I had. And so all I did was work, no holidays or whatever, which was fine with me, right? Because I like to work. And that is the best way to start a company. There's no alternative to that, right? Because you don't need any additional money. Right? The moment you accept funding, your life becomes exponential, more complicated. And when you don't know what you're doing, and that is the status of a company the first 2 to 3 years, you have no clue what you're doing. You think you do, but in hindsight, you have no clue what you're doing. So you need to buy time to do that, and then be very focused in making sure that you build something that is actually scalable, and then go for funding. So, right, I think that when to accept funding is more, right, don't do it out of necessity, but do it out of opportunity, of the scaling opportunity that you see. Right? You need to look at your company and you're like, hey, if I would have €1 million right now, I'm now investing €5,000. If I would do that times 10, I would have times 10 more outcome. Yeah. And what a lot of people do is I have a theoretical opportunity somewhere, and I'm going to test to see if that is a viable opportunity by using money. And that is never the preferred route. I'm not saying, right, you shouldn't do that at all, but it's not a preferred route. So, yeah. Not sure if it answers your question, but it's a very nuanced thing at the end. Never raise money, right? A couple of years ago, and it still exists a little bit. There's the vibe where everything is around raising money, right? If you want to do a startup, right, the most important thing they're training you is how to raise money. Now, if you want to build a startup, assuming a software startup, make sure you can just build software yourself, right? If you're not a coder, then learn at least to do minimum stuff, learn to use Figma, make clickable demos, everything like that. Make sure you create the initial success yourself, because that's by far different.
Yeah, people celebrate getting funded as well without really achieving anything yet. That's something I see as well. Yeah. So maybe funding, you could see it as like if you already have a business that's moving in the right direction, like for example, if you have a car and it's moving in the right direction with some speed already, the funding would make the car move faster. But if it's moving the wrong way, the funding won't end up anywhere good. I don't know if that's a good metaphor there. But then the second step would be, maybe not the second step, but the thing I think about secondly is hiring. How would you take on that process? Maybe you can tell something about how you hired your first employees.
Hiring is hard. Let's just start with that. Then again, if you're smaller, it's not that hard. Start with interns. Just use a lot of interns.
Yeah.
It's the easiest way to get in contact with people. If you're a fun company, if you're a small company, right, they would go not the extra mile, but an extra 10 mile. And at the end, you will distill the ones that you really need. And they will start at a rate, which is a starter's rate, which is by far more accessible. Right at the beginning, you need hands, and that is what they bring you. And that, of course, depends on what your startup structure is, right? Are you typical sales founder, right, who knows how to sell stuff, or are you the tech founder? And then that depends, of course. If you're the tech founder, make sure you don't need to sell your product, but that, right, you have a model where you use the internet to sell it. Again, your product needs to be open for that, because if you're selling to enterprises or whatever, it's quite hard. But that is most of the time also a second or a third iteration of a company. If you grow a little bit bigger, then, right, you know what the standard paradigm is hire people who know stuff that you don't know, right? So people who are complementary to who you are. And of course, all the cliches are true, is that you need to hire people who will tell you you're wrong. Right? But you need to have a balance as well, right? If you only have stubborn people who think they are smarter than you and whatever, it doesn't work either, because you are the founder for a reason, right? If you go beyond the initial first founder phase and you've proven some success, right? It is your success because you started, you made it happen. Don't let anybody say otherwise. And that is a good thing. And that is where all of the big companies originate from as well. All of us know all the stories, and it was most of the time there was a central figure / the founder who made that happen. So don't be shy about that as well. But yeah, depending on the stage that you're at, it needs different people. But right, if you're just early stage, just go with interns, right, and start with that. Then make sure you make a little money, and then first find, okay, what is the most strategic to what I need to do? Is that developing my product further? Because if I have more product feature, I will sell online faster. Then go for that. But if you're not selling, but you think you have an opportunity, you might need to have somebody in marketing or whatever. But yeah, that all depends.
Yeah, clear. And what would be the most important things you look for in an employee? Apart from, of course, the specific skill set, maybe characteristics and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that is quite simple. Always hire for drive, but because skills are something you can teach or something you can acquire, but that doesn't work for drive. And there are a lot of books about that. I think one book is actually called Drive, which is all about that as well. And that is how it works. I have never seen it done anywhere different. I have hired people who thought that they had to drive and were really smart, but they didn't have to drive, but they were smart enough and they failed. We have let's say the history of our company, we have quite some people who were really smart, but were never successful because, right, they didn't have to drive and the feeling to be in a startup culture, right? Nobody tells you what to do in a startup, right? If you work at KPMG, you get onboarded for a month and you get the manual and then they whatever do with you what is needed. But if you start as a employee with a founder, with a startup, somebody will tell you, hey, this is where we're heading. This is our goal. Now find out what you need to do. So that is where you need to hire for. And you need to have a specific drive to adapt to that setup. And it's not for everyone.
It definitely sounds like the more exciting way to go. But do you think
but not everybody is looking for excitement. I think that you need to be careful. We have hired
Definitely.
people from bigger companies and they thought they liked startups, but all of them have failed
Yeah.
because they have been in that environment, and then now, hey, it feels like I need to work harder. Yes, that's true. You need to work harder at a startup than at a corporate. So if you
Yeah,
want to, earn money in an easy way, go there.
definitely. Yeah. You also mentioned that you want to push creativity and innovation. And I'm not sure how that works now that you've received funding, but did something change, or are you still fully in control of like avoiding bureaucracy and focusing on innovation?
Yeah, the size that we have, that is still very much doable, right? What we need to do the moment we received our first funding is you have a board meeting. You need to prepare that, and you need to report on your numbers. But the numbers you need to report are on the ones that you need to have in place anyway, right? So just make sure that you fix that. And those are just the basic KPIs that you can find on the internet everywhere, like your sales pipeline and stuff like that. I think that is the premier focus of everyone, to make sure that you have that under control. So it doesn't change that much. And the creativity most of the time, right? An investor wants to have a driven founder as well, right? They don't want to think. They just want to look at the guy or girl and like, yeah, that's a cool guy. And then you just need to show that you can do it, just by going out there. And if you do that, then there's enough, there's more than enough creativity and room to be creative.
Yeah. So I've also heard a lot of founders talk about the challenges of managing people and also trying to um, keep them motivated, see the vision, stimulate that drive. What are things you learn about doing that in your own team?
I think is first, just make sure you have your vision clear yourself. So make sure you don't have it in your head, but create a deck, and then just do it, run that deck out loud, right? Nobody's watching you, just, and then see how that goes, just to make sure that you know yourself what the vision is. Um, but then if you have that in place and it's correct, then it's just repetition, repetition, right? You need to do it over and over. Um, I've had situations where I told people, "Hey, this is what we're going to do the next 3 years," and then the same person is like a month later, like, "Oh, Chris, I have no clue. Why don't you tell me what the vision is of this company?" I'm like, "I don't know. What did you forget what? And then did you forget what I was presenting?" And I just used the deck again. And like, "Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you for reminding me." And that's not a bad thing, right? Everybody's just stuck in their own bubble, also inside the company. So they're not all of the time thinking about, hey, what is the vision again? What direction are we heading? No, I have this task. This is my responsibility. I'm focusing on that. So that's why you need to repeat it on and adjust it every time, and be transparent. Um, but as long as you're, let's say, the dot on the horizon that you set, if that is inspiring enough, I think that is 70% of motivation. That people believe, hey, we're on a mission somewhere, we're going there, and this is fun. I think that is the most important thing first, and then make sure that you provide enough information for everybody that they feel engaged. Right? If you're stuck in a startup somewhere and the founder doesn't tell you anything about the success or the lack of success, then right, that doesn't motivate either. So just be transparent as much as possible, and then go for it.
So you want to kind of incorporate everyone in that team feeling. You struggle, you have the same struggles, same goals, and go through everything together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, at the end, right? People need to experience that it's their company as well. For some strange reason, I think we probably have, as humans, we have the nature to connect to something. So everybody wants to connect to their job and the company they work for. And fortunately for founders and for startups, it's easier to connect to a smaller company, and because it's more fun and it's more adventurous and everything like that. But right, if you work for a big company, I spoke to a guy who was at a Fortune 500 company, and he was really stressed because there was this and that, and this is my company, and I want this company to be successful. I'm like, you're one of 50,000
Yeah,
people, right? But he still believed that he was part of that. So it happens at small and at big scale, but it's easier to fix at the smaller scale, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, maybe that's also one of the characteristics you would want to look for when you hire someone. Get someone who actually has that feeling. But it sounds like that's difficult to see before you actually know. So,
No, it's not really right. Hiring people, um, as in let's say the overall selecting or whatever, is hard, but you need to have a proper structure for it, right? Just make sure you challenge the candidate that you're hiring in the right way, and challenging, and you just need to just I don't know, use ChatGPT to formulate the right questions. If you ask open questions and ask about work life balance, right? Just hey, how important is work to you? What kind of hobbies do you have? Right? Because it's quite easy to understand what the position of work is for somebody, and that signals work drive, right? If you hire somebody, I don't know, I'm into football and that's what I love and whatever. I go there and there, and you're like, okay, and how does football relate to your job? Well, yeah, if I need to play a match, then I take a day off, right? And it sounds a bit stupid, but right, those are ways. I'm just trying to find a way here, but those are ways to find out, right? And I have a colleague, Belgian colleague, and he's driven as well, right? So he works every evening. I don't need to ask that because that's how he was born, right? And when you talk to somebody, right, you find that quite easy. But yeah, don't be shy about making mistakes as well. The only thing is that if you're in the Netherlands and you hire somebody and you need to fire somebody, that's close to the impossible. But fortunately, we have temporary contracts, so make sure that you find somebody who can advise you there as well, and that you optimize the usage of that. Because right there's a general saying which is hire slow, fire fast, but those people do not employ people in the Netherlands because right
it's impossible.
it's impossible to fire somebody fast. In a temporary contract, you're just stuck. You need to wait it out. So if you're not sure, just make the temporary contract shorter if you're in the Netherlands, because especially if you're a smaller company, I think that's a better way to do. And if you're stuck in a permanent contract, then good luck, I would say.
Yeah.
So the hiring slow is important, right?
Hmm.
And my colleague who I just mentioned is also very diligent in hiring people. So he makes sure in the final call or in the second, right, he does three interview sessions. In the third one, he always creates pressure, right? Somebody needs to be there and needs to be the annoying person, right? How do people cope with stressful situations and stuff like that, right? You really need to make sure that you have a thorough process, because if you interview somebody, everybody within a minute, they have decided their opinion about a person, right? And you can most of the time skip it. And a lot of people believe that first feeling as well and take it as a fact. And for you, it's a fact at that moment. But I'm pretty sure that if you do a second meeting somewhere, right, and you challenge yourself, right, why shouldn't I hire this person? And then craft questions to start doing that, right? You need to prove yourself wrong in hiring somebody. And I think that
Mm.
is really important, especially in the early stages. But then again, if you're really in the early stages, I would go for interns, because
Yeah.
then you have a free trial version of a person somewhere for 20 weeks. And that was really helpful. If you look at the people who have worked with us through the different companies, there are a couple of them, and they've been with our company for 20 years, which is a long period. So there's also the predecessors of BettyBlox, and all of them started as interns. So I think that's 100% score. So I don't know. And if you look at 10 years and more, I think it's also still close to 100%. So there's also a loyalty that comes out of the internship and then growing. But again, you can't build your entire company on interns. But if you're a
It's a
startup
great start.
somewhere, then go for that.
Oh, great practical advice, yeah. And also, what you mentioned, you kind of create that feeling that somebody's there from the beginning, and then they might be more loyal to you. You also mentioned work-life balance. I was wondering, I also wrote it down here. How does it look for you? Does it exist at all?
Yeah, so it changes over the years, right? I've been an entrepreneur now for 25 years. So I don't behave the same way I do as 10 years ago. And I now know how to create more impact in less time. So, right, when you in the beginning are more trying to be everywhere, the older you get and the more experience you get, you know what it has the actual priority and which you can drop. So, right, I've never worked for a proper employer in my whole life. So I've worked with my dad years ago, and I've worked in my own business. So I have no clue how it's like. So I don't know anything else, and my wife doesn't know anything else as well, because right, the moment we met, I was already an entrepreneur, so she doesn't know me any different as well. So that means that, right, I'm always thinking about work 7 days a week, day and night. But she does the same thing as well. She has been an entrepreneur, now works for the Royal Navy in the Netherlands, something different, but she behaved the same way. So I think that's also an undervalued aspect of being an entrepreneur, is the partner you have. When the first version of our company, both my brother and I, we invited a friend. And one of the friends that we had was his girlfriend was calling every day, "Hey, why are you still at work?" Right? Like 3-4 times a week. And that doesn't really motivate you to be there, right? You need to have, but it was unconditional support. So I think that's really important as well. And I see that going wrong quite well, both at the entrepreneurial part going wrong as at the relationship part. So I think that is something that that you need to take into account as well. And I'm very, I don't know, blessed, for a lack of a different word, happy with through the years how that has worked for me.
Yeah. It sounds very. Sounds like you have a very good setup there. Also working with your brother, having a partner who's supporting you. And what kind of activities do you do to recharge, or do you just shut off everything and just relax?
You need to make sure that you have enough quiet time, just in general. So don't be proud of the fact that you only sleep for 4 or 5 hours or whatever, right? It's just stupid at the end. It does work for some people, but a very small group of people. And I'm not really sure if it actually really works.
Yeah.
Right? Physically, your mind needs quiet time as well. So just organize that. And people disconnect in different ways. So what works for me is to go mountain biking. And I also do downhill mountain biking, right? And what I like about that is that if you go down, right, you can't think about anything else, because if you, I don't know, start thinking about your job while riding a bike, you hit a tree, and you don't want to hit a tree when you're going down a mountain. And there are different activities like that, right, where you need to do that. And in a proper work-life balance, right, doing enough physical exercise or whatever, I think is just important, because I've experienced myself as well that if I'm not in a good physical shape, it really affects me mentally in a bad way. And right, and that influences people as well, right? If I'm, I don't know, stressed out and walking around in this company, then I might negatively influence or hurt people, which I don't want. So, yeah, but a lot around this, right? You can read a lot about stuff like this, but I think you need to make sure that you just, as with all things in entrepreneuring, just at the moment, stop reading and start doing stuff. I think it also counts with disconnecting and whatever, right? You can read all kinds of blogs and whatever and about doing stuff like that, but just go out there and find your own way.
Yeah, great. And I also saw you mention the 1% rule of James Clear from Atomic Habits. Are you a fan of that book?
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. He also does podcasts and whatever, and it's just inspiring. In a different way, right? So it's what I really like about what he says as well is just start behaving as the person who you want to be, right? And create an environment as well. So if you want to be a writer, create a writer corner in your house, right? And if you go there, you are a writer. And same goes with going to the gym, right? You go to the gym and you don't need to do anything there. You put on your clothes, you went there, that's the success. So there is a lot of brilliant advice in that book, and the 1% rule, right? Just every day, just make sure the compound interest story, where every day you get a little bit better, right? I think that has already been proven to the best way to be a better version of yourself, and that influences the company as well. So yeah, that's those are great. But there are a lot of them books like that. So And maybe one small piece of advice: you don't need to read the whole freaking book.
Yeah. Great one.
There's a website called Shortform. There are a lot of summary websites, and most of them are like, hey, I've read a one-page summary. I still don't know anything. I just only know why the title of the book is why it is what it is. But if you go to Shortform, I don't have any stock or whatever, so no affiliates there. But they actually put it into context, refer to different writing. And I think that's a great way to gain knowledge and use AI, right? Just chat GPT the hell out of everything. Ask for an advice how to learn X, Y, and Z, and it will help you. And combine things like that.
Were you ever stuck in like a phase where you were reading too much and not doing enough? Because
not necessarily reading too much, but not doing enough. Right? Everything goes in flows like that. So I don't know what the interval is between the flows, but sometimes you're just stuck in a moment you can get out of, and you just need to change as well. So I definitely had multiple moments of that, right? I might have it multiple times a year even, which is, right, nothing wrong. At the end, we're still humans. And I think there's a picture of some founders that there are, I don't know, geniuses and whatever, and I don't believe that. At the end, they were just smart, worked hard, and got lucky. It's a combination of that. It's also easier to start a software company in the US and be successful than if you're in the Benelux or in Luxembourg somewhere. I don't know, imagine being in Luxembourg somewhere, small state, and you want to build Facebook. I'm pretty sure it's close to impossible to do so. So there are a lot of elements to that as well. So my story is always like, all of those people are humans as well and worked hard and are smart, but got lucky as well. So you need to first make sure that you work hard and make sure that you think smart, and then the lucky part will happen as well.
Yeah, great advice. Yeah, I'm a vivid reader myself, and sometimes I catch myself on reading so much business books and then not doing anything. And then I try to remind myself of the phrase that you cannot think yourself into positive action, you can only act yourself into positive thinking, which is completely true for me all the time. I don't know if it hits home for you as well.
Yeah, it does. So I was on a trip to Silicon Valley, organized by I don't know who, and there were a lot of founders in that trip as well, and all of them have read, I don't know, like 10 founders books or whatever. And I was looking at their companies like, you have no company.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit annoyed. We were in a bus in Silicon Valley somewhere, and I just a little bit annoyed said, guys, they were talking about, did you read this? Did you read that? And I was like, guys, you need to stop reading and start building a freaking company, because reading a book doesn't build you a company. Right? It can help you to get inspired and everything,
Exactly.
but just this one thing is action, and do stuff, right? If you look at what really brings success, it's always action, and just make sure you make a decision, and maybe it's a wrong one, but you have set things in motion, and then you learn from it, and then you adjust, and then you pivot. But again, there are also books about that.
Definitely.
But read the book and then stop reading and start doing.
Yeah, great. What would you do if you were not in tech?
Oh, that's an excellent question.
Could be anything.
To be honest, I have no clue, but I think what I've learned, and what I also learned as a kid, I just like to build stuff. So I would be building something not in tech. I don't know what. I would say use technology, but then I'm in tech again. But I like to create stuff. That's what I like to do. I have an 11 years old son, and I see it in him as well, right? He takes something, and out of nothing, he likes to create stuff, and that makes him happy. When I was younger at my parents' place at the farm, I built tree houses, right? Just for the fun of it. There was just wood, and I built it. And then when the building is done, I didn't set in it or whatever, right? I just adjusted it again until I was never finished. I think that is what I like. So if I won't be in tech, then I would be creating something else somewhere else, because that's still what I like to do.
I think that's why a lot of software developers are passionate about their craft, because you can build something from nothing. It's like magic when you start, until you get to know the math behind it and the science. Maybe.
Yeah. I agree.
I don't know if you have a little bit more time for two more questions. Don't want to take up too much of your time.
No, sure.
Perfect. I wanted to know how the competition is in your scene because I think there are like 25 big players in your scene. Correct me if I'm wrong, but how does BettyBlox differentiate?
No, that's an excellent question. So there are just if you start with our competition, right, the 2025 that you mentioned, right, there's different types of it. So the first one is that you need to recognize the categories that are out there. Right, we are loco where enterprises build applications. So we're not for SMEs, we're not for a bakery somewhere or an independent professional building software. That's the first divide. So then you maybe split it into 10 different ones. Then there are platforms where you build big systems, right? Where you build your ERP system and you replace SAP or whatever. And that's also not what we do. So when you come down to our segment where people build applications who are, let's say, somewhat smaller size, right? I would say small to medium apps, right? That's what people build on our platform. That's the category that we are in. And then an additional dimension that we put on that is that we are not, right? We are for the tech savvy business person. So we do help pro coders as well, but our main goal is to make sure that a non-developer builds apps. So if you look at that space, right, there is a very limited part of the competition. And next to that, the vision that we have at this moment is that an application that's being built in our platform, technology-wise, is exactly the same as that you would have coded yourself, and that you can actually pick it up and then continue to code it. So you start with BettyBlox and you don't want to use low code, you can pick it up and use somewhere else. And that is a unique trait to our platform, which nobody else offers, because all of the other platforms are proprietary. So that means they're closed and you have a vendor lock-in. I think that's really important. It's also how we look at the future of low code is that, right, you don't need to decide if you want to pro code stuff or low code stuff, right? Part of an application, you want an high code, low code, or high code or pro code. And another part, it's faster to do the other way around. I think that is the future that we're working towards and that we're heading towards. And that's the future that we want to unlock. And that's also how we differentiate as well, because no other platform can facilitate that at this stage.
Yeah, great advice. So as someone interested in the SaaS business specifically, how did you guys find that kind of product market fit of not helping SMEs, but also not the biggest companies, but kind of in between? Was it just that these customers came to you guys, or did you at a certain point just decide to focus on them?
Yeah, at the end there was a decision, right? Because we had a spread out field of all kinds of customers, and what we noticed what fit our platform and our company best was, let's say, the mid-market and enterprise customers, because what we really wanted to do is not just rush to an app and then do it cheap or whatever. We were really into building quality applications. And making sure that there was time to build quality as well. And that is a budget issue, and bigger companies have bigger budgets. So that was, using that information and what we noticed with our customer base, that was the decision that we made. So at the end, because it's also just who do you reach out to, right? If you don't reach out to the bakery at the corner of the street, they will not be your customer. Or if they, and if they have an inbound lead, or you just optimize your communication and your pricing as well to make sure that it fits the audience that you have. But it was a decision.
Okay, great. Just to finish off, I'm wondering what kind of industries or scenes would you look into if you were starting a startup right now? You were maybe 20, 21 years old. What would be interesting to you?
Yeah, of course. It depends on what you want to do. So I'm assuming you are suggesting a software company, build a software company.
If I'm asking for myself, definitely. And I think for a lot of viewers as well. Yeah, so let's take software as an example.
So I think what you first want to do is, at the end, an ID comes to you, right? And you don't make it up somewhere, right? So you're at the toilet somewhere, right? You're taking a shit, and then
That's where the magic happens.
That's where under the shower as well. Don't combine these two, by the way. That doesn't help. But so it comes to you. So I'm not sure if it helps that I suggest stuff, because then you start looking for stuff. But if you have multiple ideas, and then it depends on what you like, right? Do you like to? Some people like to have a more impactful company, right? Then you want to put some, it sounds a bit odd, put some green stuff in it, right? And make sure you find something there. But if you really want to go commercial and your goal is to be the biggest out there or earn a lot of money, if you want a combination of that, I would also say do something which facilitates a payment process somewhere, or where a finance flow or a cash flow somewhere is involved. If you look at all the big companies which grow fast, it's because it's the easiest one to acquire, or sorry, it's the easiest one to sell. Right? If you sell something where the company directly makes money and you facilitate the money making,
Yeah.
that's the easiest way to do. If you really want to, if you're into software and right, you want to, you don't want to have a sales organization because you want to focus on the tech. Make sure that your product is something that you can sell online and that works. Right? Don't raise money if you don't have signed up your customers via the internet, the first 10, 20, 30, whatever yourself. It's not that much work, right? Sign up with Stripe and then have a payment flow somewhere. Make sure that you get the first customers there. And that means you're not directly selling to an enterprise probably, because that is a whole different sales cycle. And that's what you see people do the most, right? Because at the end, that sounds like the holy grail. But if you look at the holy grail of valuation for companies, it is always in the enterprise space. So those are, I think, interesting considerations. But if I would start a company again, to be honest, I would, right? If I would sell my company today, I would stay in this scene, because what I like about what we do is I was this 11-year-old developer on this secondhand computer machine, and I'm still in software development, right? Because I've built software where you can build software. So I think that is what I enjoy the most. And with our new, let's say the right division that I said, that you don't need to decide to pro code or low code. I think there's a lot that we need and can do there. And I'm always a big fan of standardization and open source as well. So that is something that is also really interesting if you're in tech. See if you can, right? If open source is a model for you as well, because that's a really interesting route as well. It's a hard one, but it's a cool one to be in as well, also ethically, because it's a different approach.
Definitely. Yeah, open source is a whole different game. You see it now in the AI scene a lot, that these big companies are forced to kind of shift to open source if other big players are doing it. It's very interesting. I want to thank you for your time. A lot of valuable advice, a lot of knowledge. Do you want to end it with something about BettyBlox? Maybe if people are interested in building their own solutions, who is it suitable for? How do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, so if you work at a let's say a mid-market or an enterprise company, and you recognize the problem that I just mentioned, that you're in the business and you want to solve that yourself, I think then make sure to reach out. And otherwise, just reach out to me on LinkedIn, whatever you're interested in. I'm always open for questions or for help as well. I think what we can do even more as founders is just make sure that we're approachable and that we help everybody who's there, because at the end, we all benefit from more and beautiful startups and scale-ups in the region that you're in. And that's what I'm working for as well. Make sure that more companies will be successful, and I always help where I can. So if anybody would like to learn more or needs help, then just reach out via LinkedIn, and I'm
exactly
there.
what I did. Yeah, that's it's not a lie, because that's exactly what I did, and you took the time to hop on this call. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for all the advice and the knowledge. If people have any questions, I'll put the LinkedIn link in the description. Maybe until next time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Stop for